I did not know until I started this lesson, preparing this lesson, what stripling meant. But it's a very young man, I guess, is what it is. He's just a stripling. It's an archaic saying. I've never used it in my life except the stripling warriors, and I never had the sense to look it up and see what it meant until I was under the pressure of having to prepare.
You mean to tell me, Ted, nobody ever looked at you and said, "You striplings are hoodlums"?
They say that to me all the time, because of, my youth, I guess, if you know what I'm saying. So that's where I'm at there. But yeah, I'm not a stripling anymore, believe it or not. But nor are you, by the way, Steve, or for that matter, even Denise.
We've come beyond the striplings.
I'm beyond stripling.
I don't know if Denise ever was a stripling. She probably could have never been a stripling because I think it refers to young men.
Yeah.
But here's the thing about this lesson that is interesting, and I think I told you before, Steve, but for Denise's sake, I've had a lot of people tell me, and I felt when I first read the Book of Mormon, I said, "Oh, it's just war stories," And you hear that from a lot of people. Oh, it's all it is all about war. Well, this particular lesson, you'd be hard pressed to argue that it wasn't all about war.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of message there too. I mean, it's
right.
the value of youth following their parents' instructions, the value of having faith, and the value of determination, and the willingness to tell it like it is. And I love the letter from Moroni, the Moroni letter, and the letter he got back as well from, how do you Pahoran? I have
Pahoran?
Is that it? Pahoran?
I think. And I loved the underlying lessons of not only what you had just said, but in addition, Pahoran could have reacted terribly to those harsh words that
Indeed.
he was
Indeed,
able
because
to
Moroni did smack him around just a little bit, maybe. Would that be a fair way to say it?
Right.
He did smack him around a bit, and and I can go back in later and add the text and put it up on the screen of the letters, and I will do that so people can read it. I can put that in later because I wanted that in our conversations. I wanted to get insight, feelings, things that you feel that you would be beneficial to our people that go to Sunday school, or will go to this kind of a Sunday school with the purpose of getting into the real Sunday school when we have that.
Okay.
There you go.
Agreed.
Now, I'm going to tell you out of my personal life, okay? I have been quarantined pretty much, except to go out for walks and stuff like that. I've gone to Harmon's a bit, and I have, I like being able to buy my bread from Kneaders because I can just drive through and buy it. But in order for me to make sense of my life career-wise, I have got to go out and see people. That's the bottom line. I'm going to have to do that, and I'm concerned about that as our people going even to church. I can't remember what it was, but people were going to something. Becky was showing me something that they went to where everybody came like it was the old days, and a whole bunch of people got sick, got the corona. So that's a reality we live with right now.
Yeah.
And as I think about it in terms of bringing up kids, I'm going to go to page 2 so you can see that, slide number 2. We can have more time with our kids to bring them up, and us as we speak are, we're seasoned veterans of bringing up kids to the point where we've already got past that part of our life. I'm joking with you, but there's some serious truth to that. So they're taught by their mothers. They became heroes. I'm going to go to the next slide, and last slide that I have ready for this is, what were they taught? What did they learn from their parents, and what could we do today as parents with our kids? I think that's a part of this lesson that could easily get lost in the wars, but is a big part of what we're trying to get across here.
One of the things that I realized in this lesson is, if you think of who their parents were, they were the anti-Lehi Nephites that did not war. They had buried their weapons of war. And so here are these young men who were not brought up by parents that wielded shields and war and weapons of war, but they were taught the things of God by their mothers and their fathers. So they weren't
right,
warriors.
And they were taught that if they had faith, they would be okay. Go on. I'm sorry, I stepped on you.
Well, they weren't taught to be fighters. They were raised by non-fighters, God-loving non-fighters, which is interesting with what they had to do with their life.
Indeed, and for the length of time that they had to do it, when there was a high percentage of people who died, yet they were not among them.
Right. Right.
And then several campaigns that they were. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I didn't want to jump ahead, but if you look at, and I was watching something else studying for this, and they were talking about who they chose as their leader was Helaman. Well, he was a preacher. So here were these great young men raised by loving, non-fighting parents, led by a preacher, which is amazing in itself, how successful they were. And that's a lesson to trust God.
Indeed. Good point. Steve, any thoughts here?
Yeah, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, how close are we coming to what the parents of these stripling warriors are capable of doing? I mean, if you've got more than one child, you pretty much know that every child's different.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all going to grow up with different attitudes and different ways that you've got to discipline them. I mean, I have 5 sons, and not 2 of them could be disciplined the same way, nor could any 2 of them be taught exactly the same way.
Right.
They had each and every one of them be taught and disciplined in their own way. And I'm wondering, some of them stay with the church, some of them don't.
Well, is that the truth?
Some of them are very faithful, and some of them won't have anything whatsoever to do with anything church related. So,
while that is very true, and I have kids that are not a part of this church, nor do they want to be. I mean, my daughter Heather doesn't want to have anything to do with it, but she learned to be family oriented, and she has no problem. In fact, I don't know if I've asked her lately, but I think she would say a prayer at mealtime, and they learned from it that you don't see it until maybe sometime way down the road in the future. I really, Travis, who was unique in that at the time that he was in the scouting program, 90% of the scouts that gained their eagle served a mission. Well, he didn't want to serve a mission. He's in that 10%. And we had at the time, there were a couple, 2 or 3 kids, 2 in particular I'm thinking of, that were not in the church, but were in the scouting program. And he leaned towards them as opposed to the members of the church that were in the scouting program. He got along with everybody, Travis did, but his thinking was, going a different way. And he got his eagle kicking and screaming. The only thing he had left to do was his project. And it took him a year to do it. And that's why I guess where I had struggled, and the reason that he became an eagle is the church would only allow at 11 years old to go to the scouting camp if you were there with your parent. Well, by gosh, I was going to make sure that he went, and he got like 6 or 7 badges there that he didn't have to worry about in the future. Because by the time he was by the time he was 16 for sure, it was over. And from 14 to 16, it was a struggle. But at 16, uh, he wasn't in the Scouts anymore. Period. End of story. And I think there's a lot of kids like that, you know.
Yeah.
And there you go.
Gail and I were watching a movie a couple of nights ago, the RM, and he's asking two of his younger brothers, the twins, the younger brothers. He said, "Have you almost got your eagle?" And one of the twins said, "Mom's almost got our eagle."
Yep. That's how it was with my mother.
Sometimes that's how it is.
My mother had 4 boys and me, and she had a pin that she had made with the mother's pins on it, the Eagles' mother's pins, because she basically earned those 4 Eagles just cracking the whip.
Well, I will tell you this, Nate, your husband, Nate Allen, got Eagles for a lot of kids over a lot of years. I mean, he was very, very active in helping in the scouting program in the most positive way. I worked with him for years, and it was a thrill for me to work with him. And you kind of could see how things should be done. You're at peace with people, but you're trying to direct them in a direction. And we had that going with Nate as our leader. I remember it well. Well, there you have it, as far as that goes. So we got this, and I'm going to bring up something. I don't want to get too political, but we need to get political a little bit, because this is a political lesson. The government, there was a fight between Moroni and the government. That was what he was referring to. And we have a president right now. I am a certified professional behavior analyst. In other words, I can tell whether a person is of the 4 different behaviors: dominant, influencers, stable, or compliant. Our president is dominant, 100 points of dominant. And dominant people, especially dominant like him, are very offensive to a lot of people. They don't like that attitude that they possess. They're very task oriented. They're not people oriented. They're very blunt. They're as blunt as the front of a city bus. I mean, and that's our president. And for a lot of reasons, it's interesting to me that they tried to impeach him, but they were unable to find anything wrong that they could come up with to guarantee that he could get him impeached. So they were not able to say he did something wrong. And people don't even like the fact that he sent troops out to stop people from destroying the federal government buildings. Well, I think he has a right to do that. That's my opinion. And I think that I'd like to know what, Moroni would have thought, or Owen, if I can pronounce his name, what he thought.
Payhorn was asking to increase the budget, the military budget, because he wasn't getting any support. And that's what he was complaining to Payhorn about. You're not holding up your end. I'm out here with these soldiers, and you're not doing your part. We were promised help. So,
indeed.
And Payhorn, on the other hand, he wasn't getting any help from the people that were supposed to be helping him. So he felt, like wrongly accused. Moroni, in a way, he really hit the wrong person with that one. Payhorn was doing everything he thought he was capable of doing. It evidently wasn't enough. So,
but sometimes you can get away with it. I mean, he got away with a very stinging letter, because not only was Payhorn doing his best, he even did more, and then they figured out how they could get together and solve the problem.
And instead of getting upset and saying, you know what, to heck with it, I'm not doing this, he was calm and rational and offered a solution to their problem. And that's something we do not have in today's government.
Right. I love this lesson in that we need to, you never know what the other person is going through. And in Payhorn's case, he wasn't even in the leadership position at that time.
Yeah.
If you remember, they had kicked him out of the judgment seat and all of the freemen. And it were the the kingmen that had taken over. So he wasn't
Yeah,
even
these
in that
didn't.
political power to get the things that Moroni and the other troops needed. So we need to also be careful not to judge a person because they're not doing exactly what they want them to, or what we want them to do, because we don't know what situation they're in. Like Pahoran, he was in a terrible situation himself.
It's the old stripling warrior saying, don't judge a man until you've walked in his moccasins.
Yep, exactly.
Well, there you have it. Yeah, exactly. And a lot of truth to that. And you know what I don't see in our government right now that would be nice to see. We have a president who is very task oriented, very opinionated. He does have a solution to everything, not necessarily what's deemed to be the correct solution. And the thing about dominant people, if you can get them aside where you're not embarrassing them in front of other people and explain why you think they're wrong and you're right, and you could present a lucid argument, they will change. They're task oriented. They just want to do the right thing. And he does. Forgive him for that. I mean, if you're an anti-Republican, and I don't want to go too far with the politics, but it's all about politics. That's what was happening there when they came to help Pahoran and kept just a skeleton crew there to be on the front lines in the outskirts of the territory. Fortunately, they weren't overrun. Everything worked out just perfect, and they were able to get these kingmen and up against the wall with the kingmen, I guess. Is that a good way to say that?
I think that's a pretty good way of saying it. They found a solution to their problems.
Right.
And today, I'm looking at the government saying, I don't think they want a solution to their problems. We're so divided at this particular point in time that you've got one opinion in the executive office, you've got another opinion in Congress. And at this point, honestly, I'm looking at this going, if the man not only cured the coronavirus, but cured cancer and heart disease and gave everybody in the United States $1 million, there'd be a problem with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'd vote against them.
Divisive. It's that divisive.
You know, let me share this with you. As being when I passed my test for certification to become a certified professional behavior analyst, what we would do is we would get charts which showed, they just hand you these charts which would show the overall behavior of the people, their amount of dominance, stability, compliance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you'd have these different committees, a marketing committee, or this or that, or whatever else. And who do you want of this group? You get this large group of charts. Who do you want to be a part of your group? Well, all of the dominant people got kicked off the island, without exception. There was not a single exception in the group that I worked with where the dominant people were not kicked off the island. And that is what they're trying to do with Trump. In fact, I'm surprised that Trump won the election, and I wonder how they decide who wins the election, what's going on there anymore. I was surprised because we have so much prejudice in this country when we had a black man elected president, and who's making that decision? Is it really the people with our votes, or is something going on?
It really isn't. It was set up over 200 years ago that the
Electoral
College of Electoral Votes would be the final say. And so, yes, it is in a way. The people make the vote, and the states send their electoral votes based somewhat on that, but not totally. I mean, I actually wasn't surprised because I knew that these polls that they were sending out and saying, okay, Hillary Clinton's got this locked. It's over. And I'm looking at it going, no, it isn't. They're lying to them. When they're doing these polls, the people are flat lying and saying they're going to vote for her, and they're not. So I wasn't at all shocked.
Isn't that amazing? That is just, but so true, amazing, but true, I guess would be the best way to say it.
Well,
and
even in my own family, I've got one son that is he is a Trump hater. No matter what Trump does, he's wrong. And every word that comes out of his mouth is a lie. And so when we get together for things, the rule is we don't talk politics. Don't bring it up. Don't talk about it, because it's going to end in a fight somewhere, and I'm not having it.
And that's, and that's why it's good, I guess, that we can talk a little politics where nobody gets to talk back. You know what I'm saying? So we're not going to have a fight here. But because it was so political, the Kingmen were so against Peoran, and so there was a real problem there. And if you look at it, we could have had the same problem in not Seattle, but in Portland. In Portland, we could have had the same problem actually right here in Salt Lake. We had that overturned police car and fire to that and all. Yeah, and fortunately, as I understand it, the people that were involved in that here in Utah, they brought them to justice. Am I correct in that? That's my thinking from what I've read.
I think they're still attempting to. Yeah.
At least they rounded them up, if you know what I mean, and let them know
they could find them.
They did take them to. I guess the last two were in court today.
Okay.
Oh, were they?
Yeah, I think so. That's what somebody on the news said. But and I'm having a difficult time looking at this and saying we are a land of laws, and yet all of a sudden we're having government officials telling us it doesn't matter if you break the law or not. We're not gonna prosecute you.
Yeah.
You take over a police station, not a problem. We're not going to prosecute you. And I'm having a hard time rationalizing that in my head. We are a country of laws and always have been.
Right.
So what am I missing here? Where are we going wrong?
It's a messy world right now, for sure.
No question.
And we've got a lot of issues to be concerned about. Corona is certainly up at the top of the list, but there are other items too that are really affecting our country. And our prayers should be like, we're told that at the end, it's going to be very little that saves us. And we need to be a part of that very little. That's my belief, that the only way that's going to happen is if we get involved in trying to make things correct, make things right. And there you go. And, whether they like Trump or not, he is our president. He is our leader. And in businesses that I've been involved in, my success or failure wasn't based on me having the world's greatest idea, because a lot of times I felt like I did, but someone else's, I was in power and decided to do it another way. And if I didn't support them, I wasn't there any longer, so I had to decide, do I want to support them or not, go somewhere else. So that's the issue we have in this country too. I think we need to. Yeah.
I mean, I've worked for people that basically would call me in and say, I need your input. And they really wanted it.
Right.
Now, once I gave my input, they didn't necessarily agree with it. And they didn't always take it. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. But we would hash it out. He would listen to my argument. We'd talk about it, and he'd say, Steve, this is what I'm going to do. And I've listened to you, but I think I'm going to go this way instead. I need you to back me up on this. Because if this fails, it's on me. And I said, okay, you got my support. We've cashed it out. This is the way you want to go. You're the boss. I'll back you to the hilt. because if it comes down, it's on you. And I'd back him up. Sometimes it worked out. Sometimes he'd come back and say, we should have gone your way.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'd have to walk into his office and say, boy, were you right on that one. Man, good thing you didn't go with my idea. But
well, and I wish we were getting that I wish we were getting that now with President Trump, because
absolutely
we're not.
I had a dominant boss, but he was open to ideas to see what the very best course to follow was. And we're not seeing that.
No.
It may, even if it's there, we're not seeing it. And it probably, go ahead.
I was just going to say, don't you think in the split second at the very beginning of the coronavirus, we saw a split second of us coming together to fight the enemy, which is the coronavirus? That lasted a split second. And then it just all went to a mess. For 1 second, we were all in it together, and then it just has disintegrated into the craziness now.
You know,
well,
I think
my son asked me, oh, go ahead, Steve, I'm sorry.
I think the best time that we saw this country and said, okay, you can pick on my brother, that's fine, or you can pick on me, but you pick on my brother, I'm coming back after you. And that was in 2001. When they bombed those buildings and took those buildings down with the airplanes, we came together as a country and we're actually united for one of the few times in the past 50 years.
I agree.
But since then, you get that glimmer, you get that little teeny piece of hope, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. We had that for just that split second, but then, nope, we're going to go the different way again.
You know, my son was asking me when I thought he would get his $1,200 stimulus check that both the Republicans and Democrats agree on. I said, well, if Trump wins the election, you'll get it as soon as he wins. If the Democrats win, you may have to wait until after January sometime to get it, because I don't think they're getting together. They're so far apart.
I think the terminology you're looking for is when the devil's domain is frozen over with snowballs.
Yep, to put it a calm way.
Indeed. That's a good way to say it.
You're going to get it.
Well, we have just a few minutes left. I mean, we've got about 7 minutes, actually, that I wanted to take this to 45 minutes. That's about what we get, isn't it, Denise, when we do a lesson? Don't we get about 45 minutes?
Yes.
So what is your, you know, any final thoughts on what this means spiritually to, you know, the people that we have, you know, our friends and our neighbors, if you know what I'm saying. How can we help them?
You know, the one thing that stood out from the lesson to me is that you go through Alma 53 through 63, and you look at the successes that happen because they always follow God. And that's been the theme throughout the Book of Mormon. You trust in God, you follow God, He'll take care of you. But along with that, I have loved and been enlightened on what a great planner Moroni was. He didn't go in there just willy-nilly. He always had a plan. And so when I was writing those down and noting, okay, he had this plan, he had several plans through those 10 chapters of scripture that all came to fruition. God let him, you know, they had success. But then it also made me think, you know, the Lord helps those that help themselves. We can't just sit back and think that things are going to be okay. It's like you said, Ted, we have to take action. We have to have a plan. We have to be proactive in what's going on and try to survive this madness. And then the Lord will help us if we take effort and have faith, put forth the work. Like Moroni did, have a plan. He was a great planner.
Right. And there were, he called it strategies, and there was another word he used, I can't remember, but it's what was the stratagem for this particular encounter that he was about to embark on. And but it was a plan. That's really what it was. So, and well thought out, very, very likely to be successful based on the way, sadly, that war works, if you know what I mean. At least he knew what he was doing there. And they had success after success in spite of not having as many people to partake, and they were outnumbered. So you could, if you were a general in some army anywhere, you could learn a lot by reading these chapters. There's no question about it. You really could. And as people, we can learn a lot also, in that we need to be able to stay together, and we need to pray for that in our government, and we need to speak up, let people know that we believe that. And there you go.
Yeah. And that God's behind those plans, even though we came up with them, we know who they're really from. We get that insight from God. He's just waiting for us to get that plan together.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think one thing that I really was touched by was, no matter how many times I read that, I'm touched by the fact that Payhorn did take a step back.
Yeah.
And instead of reactionary situations and going back after him, he said, let me explain where I'm coming from. He didn't get mad. He didn't, start yelling and screaming and get upset and offended. He tried to make Moroni see where he was coming from and why things were going, and that he actually really was trying, and he'd lost his power to do anything. But because of that, they were able to come together and find a solution rather than that go back and forth fighting a war between each other.
There's a proverb in there somewhere: a soft answer turneth away wrath. And I think Payhorn's soft answer was perfect. And it's really, gosh, it's just amazing to see. If we could get a little bit more of that in our government, and maybe in our own lives, with our own children and our own families,
Yeah.
It would be good.
Ted, I had one more thing.
Sure, absolutely.
I was reading also on Alma 59 when, let's see, I think what's happening at that point. Moroni is asking Payhorn to strengthen the forces of Helaman, and he's angry with the government, like we've talked about. And in Alma 59:9, this is something that I thought was really insightful and interesting as Latter-day Saints. We all have ebbs and flows where we're doing really well, or then we might lose our faith a little bit. And he's talking about the city of Nephi, and how he says it is so much easier to keep the city from falling into the hands of the Lamanites by prior preparations than to retake it from them. And that I thought about as a person. It is so much more easy to remain faithful than it is to return the faith after you've gone astray, is another insight that I had in this lesson, that I thought, it's so much easier. We all struggle. This is a time of trial. Life is a trial. And so it's easier just by this advice in Alma 59:9, stay in the boat.
Yeah,
it's easier to stay in the boat than get in the boat once you've fallen out. So
absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that, Steve. And any final insight that you might have?
Yeah,
here?
I think that I watched a movie one time, and George Burns was playing God, and he said something that I've never forgotten. He said, if you have a hard time believing in me, just remember, I believe in you. We are his sons and daughters.
Right.
And we need to stress that to our children and to the people of the church. We're all his sons and daughters, and he does love us.
Amen.
Oh, amen. Well, thank you. I think you pretty well summed it up. I do think that we need to be thinking in terms of how we can be helpful to our family, to our church, and to our government. How can we help? What can we do? How can we do something that make life better for all of us? And we certainly have the time now that we have a little extra Corona time, call it Corona time.
Mm-hmm.
I will put this video together, and I will try to get this in the Sunday paper with the link to it, to the video, so that that people can watch it if they would like. And my prayer is that this lesson will be helpful to those that are able to watch the video, and that we can get more people to watch the video. I think I was very excited about the way that y'all, both you, Steve, and Denise in particular, because she's that's her calling. And I was just so thrilled to get her to help me. And your insight is always there, dead on. And
I need both of you to know that we appreciate so much everything you do for that class, and the lessons you bring and the knowledge you bring. It's amazing.
Well, Steve, my prayer is that we can, be able to get back together again as a class. But in
Absolutely.
the meantime, we can open this kind of a format that we have. Doesn't have to be limited to 2 or 3 people. We could actually do this. We could open it up and have students that are interested in being a part of this lesson, the lessons that we have when we have the lessons, be there. And we could certainly do that. And I plan to do it. And if Denise wants my help with her lesson, I would love to be there with her.
I would appreciate it, because you're the whiz at this, Ted. I have no idea what to do, and I really appreciate you and all your efforts to get this together.
Well, the technology is not a problem for me, this kind of technology, assuming that when I tell it, my prayer is that I see the red thing, the red light on record, which says that we're recording. I told it to record. If it recorded, we're good to go. If it didn't do it, then we don't have a lesson. So I'm sorry about that. But I think we're okay. It usually works. So
thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Well, God bless. You
Have a
bet.
good
Take
one.
care.
Take care.
I'll end it. And you bet. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.